Hello, my name is Doug Lennick, and welcome to Smart Money Moves. Welcome back for many of you, and welcome for the first time for those of you who are new. Today, we're talking about taxes in retirement, why your tax picture changes. As always, my co-host, Adam Recker, head of investments and equities here at the Mather Group, is co-hosting with me, but we are joined by Michael Kowalski, who you've seen in the past. He's our head of tax, and then Matthew Greer, wealth advisor, and someone many of you are probably actually seeing on a regular basis. So we hope a number of your clients, Matthew, are watching today. So we're talking smart money moves, we're talking taxes, and I'm going to turn to Michael. I know when we talk about investments and taxes and there's a word in our industry, it's called timing. And and when we do investment timing, Adam, I think we say that's not a really good idea. But when we do tax timing, we say that is a good idea. So let's talk about that, Michael. I'm going to just turn it to you, and let's hear about what's going on right now in the tax world.
Well, Doug, Adam, I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me join you guys today. And it's certainly nice to be joining you outside of tax season. I know the last time you had me on, it was a little bit of a busy time of year for us.
But
But
it's always tax season. That's part of the thing.
we're always thinking about tax strategy, but not necessarily tax returns, Doug.
Yeah,
And
that's a good point. So, and
it
that
is.
actually is a point we need to make for all of our viewers. Tax strategy is an all year thing. The tax return doesn't happen all year.
It
So,
certainly does not. And we're thinking about that behind the scenes, certainly when it comes to changes to tax law that we see taking place over time. But a lot of our tax strategy that we work with our clients on is really based around controlling the controllables, and that comes down to timing. It's not market timing, and it's not saying that we're no tax laws are going to change down the road. But for a large portion of our clients, required distributions are the biggest tax headache that they're going to face in their retirement. And we can't change the fact that tax deferred assets have required distributions on them. We can't change that they have to at some point have the tax dollars paid unless they're donated to charity, of course. But we can change the timing of that. And we do that by looking at Roth conversions for a lot of our clients. And for certain clients, that can mean higher taxes while we're doing conversions for the benefit of really reduced taxes long term. Again, kind of controlling the controllables, so to speak. And there's a couple of different elements to that we've seen change over the last couple of years. We've now got certainty around the estate and gifting, lifetime exclusions, and annual limits, looking at how much an individual can donate or gift to anyone else, $19,000 for 2026, and then $15 million lifetime exclusion, $30 million for couples. That can make a really significant difference in the taxable estates for our clients that want to efficiently pass wealth on to their beneficiaries. Again, we've got certainty around that for the next couple of years. I think we see tax laws typically change every presidential election cycle, but this gives us a really good opportunity to move forward confidently for our planning for our clients that want to pass wealth on to their children.
well, well, and as somebody who actually has done some of this, I will say, and this example is interesting. A married couple, I'm a married couple, or I'm not the couple, but I'm married to someone who makes us a couple, and we have three children, and they are all married. And I can tell you that it's both a good way to give assets away, but the people getting them get the benefits of it as well. And that's sometimes underestimated, that the strategy is for the person giving it away, but the beneficiaries of the strategy get to enjoy it while the benefactor is alive. That's
You
not all
bet.
bad. Everybody wins.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the ways that you can actually continue to enjoy the wealth that you've donated rather than just at your passing.
I like it. What else we got?
One
We've
of
got,
the, oh,
there we go. Later, cost more. Talk about this. This is a big deal.
this goes back to controlling the controllables. And again, required distributions are one of the largest tax headaches that our clients face. And if you start thinking about that early on in your career, you can really plan to minimize the impact of required distributions. Oftentimes, tax deferred assets and tax deferred accounts like your 401k, your IRAs, they're incredibly effective at accumulating wealth. The problem is that once you get to required distribution age, which for most of our clients is 75 now, you're going to have to start taking those dollars out. And what has grown over time creates a large amount of income that you have to recognize every single year. That creates a compounding effect for a lot of our clients' income. It makes Social Security taxed at the top rate. We were going to take capital income that might otherwise have gone at 0% capital gains rate, maybe 15% gets moved to 20% long-term capital gains rate, but it can increase the taxes on top of every other component of our clients' incomes. And again, this flips overnight. You go from early on having the ability to have low income years or control how much income you have to now having a fixed amount just over the next year of how much you have to take out. And that amount's going to continue to grow every single year as a function of the growth in the account and having to take a higher percentage of that account out. So all this speaks to proper planning and really getting a head start on it to know what your taxes are going to look like over your lifetime, not just focused on one year in particular.
Well, and that's, I think, really critical as we look forward and going into this. This starts to get into what we do once we start considering this. Now, you mentioned Roth conversion. That's just a strategy. It's not the only one, but we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about it because of these costs and what we then do on the investment side of this, which is where we bring Adam into this conversation.
Okay.
So, Adam, what do you think here as we look at this? What should our viewers be seeing here?
Yeah, I think a couple takeaways here, kind of piggybacking off of what Michael said. Say we establish that the Roth conversion makes sense, it's attractive, we want to do it. Now, what are other things to be aware of and to maybe account for? I think a good one is you look at a chart like this where markets generally move up and to the right over time is a pretty good argument, again, for not waiting. Once you identify the conversion makes sense, the sooner you can do it, get the benefit of tax-free compounding in a Roth IRA, the better. At the same time, we notice things like, and we've said it very simply in the past, you want to get higher appreciating assets into a tax-free growth bucket like a Roth IRA. And so when we're looking at which assets to select, a few become a little bit more obvious than others. And so generally speaking, looking at a longer term chart like this, going back to even say, 2008, which again, the dates are somewhat arbitrary. The selection of investments, large growth, large value, emerging, et cetera, are somewhat arbitrary. But you can see that generally speaking, stocks have done better than bonds. And so again, we want to prioritize high growth assets like stocks to put in those Roth IRAs as well. Another takeaway is that markets are volatile at times. And a key nuance is, while we advocate for, getting the conversions done in a timely manner, you don't necessarily want to wait for a market pullback. Market pullbacks can provide an opportunity, though, because an operational aspect or nuance of all of this is that when we convert, we're not just moving dollars from one account to another, but often for our clients, we're journaling, say, shares of one holding from a traditional IRA into a Roth IRA. The benefit in our eyes is one, we don't need to sell something. If the market happens to pull back and we have an opportunity to accelerate, say, one of these Roth conversions in a period like a 2020 timeframe where markets are down quickly, stocks are now at a suppressed value relative to where they were previously, we can journal those lower appreciated shares, a greater amount of shares from the traditional IRA into a Roth IRA, so that when the value of those shares recover, that's all tax-free growth. And so a couple things, there's a timing aspect, there's a flexibility aspect, there's an asset selection aspect when making these decisions. Now, one of the things we want to show to not have our clients, caught off guard or making improper maybe assumptions about this process. I would expect many would look at a chart like this and see something like large cap growth and say, well, that must be the asset we want to convert going forward because it's done better over this time frame. That's not always the right conclusion. In fact, when we are looking ahead and this is an action or a process of looking ahead, we need to consider what are the things that could do well in the future, not the things that did well in the past. And so as we flip to the next slide and we look at, say, year to date, opposed to the period ending last year, if we would have selected something again over this limited time frame and said, hey, let's choose the thing that did the best, large cap growth, and did a conversion at, say, the end of 2025 or early 2026, that may not be the right selection because it hasn't done as well as other assets. In fact, the things that were lagging previously, emerging markets, small cap value, in fact, they've had more attractive valuations in a sense. They've had improving earnings. And so those may be worth considering over the things that did the best. And so often when we're
Well,
working, go ahead, Doug.
something you hit on, really an important word you said a couple minutes ago that, and you used, and you're emphasizing it again, but it's the word decisions. You
Mhm.
said that, and as Michael was talking, a couple of things are coming to my mind, which is one, we want to make sure that we're helping our clients and prospective clients. I help everybody understand what and know what to do. And then what you're saying is deciding to do what to do. And then Matthew, we're going to bring you in a little bit in getting him to go from knowing to deciding to actually doing it. But I like the flavor here of what you're saying. So, Adam, sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to emphasize the importance for everyone. Think of those three words: knowing what to do, knowing when to do it, and therefore deciding, and then actually doing it. The knowing, deciding, doing, and that's what we want to be able to help everybody with is not just doing, knowing what the right thing to do is, but actually doing it. So
Mhm.
thank you for emphasizing the decision part of that.
Yeah. And so I guess maybe staying on that topic again, like, well, how do you prepare to do this stuff? Like, what are the other things to account for? What could derail the plan even? And so I think it is on the next slide. It's kind of one we've shown before, but how we look at some of this from a tier perspective. And so, and this isn't a decision that, say, investment team makes in isolation. There are certain rules here you can see around, what kind of investment assets, best go into each bucket. So like in the Roth IRAs, high growth assets, long-term money, get the benefit of tax-free growth. Traditional IRAs, if you can use that tax shelter to shelter, higher income securities, that's always a great idea. But also having an idea around, what could be converted into a Roth IRA long term. But an even more important part, I would say, is often, making sure that in those tier one, tier two, those taxable assets that we as a team are working with the advisors and the tax team, and they're working with the clients as well to make sure that those buckets have enough stable assets to facilitate near-term spending needs, Roth conversion tax bills, because you want to have that money ahead of time when the market falls. Because if the market falls and you've waited to say take your capital gains, um, you may not have that opportunity anymore if you're forced to sell the stocks at an artificially low price. And so, again, having enough cash, and then even in that tier two, um, taxable assets that are invested in, high quality bond ladders to meet needs, things like that, are very important in our view to make sure that these strategies are facilitated seamlessly.
Well,
Adam, I
and
don't think that that can be understated because that's one of the bigger risks. When you think about the risks in anyone's portfolio, it's an inappropriate asset allocation and location strategy relative to the client's goals, risk tolerance, family dynamics. So when we structure the withdrawal strategy in this way, and again, Doug, it goes back to the doing part. What we're trying to do is create an environment that, yes, is optimized from an investment and a tax standpoint, but also from a behavioral standpoint. Our clients are able to more adhere to a strategy that that puts the riskier assets in the accounts that they'll use last, such as the Roth IRA, and the more conservative assets, those assets don't tend to move around quite as much, and the taxable accounts or the brokerage accounts, knowing
well, and
that
what
rolling
are
on that same principle.
and what our viewers have been hearing from us and will continue to hear from us is because we are essentially doing our best to prepare our clients for the truth. The truth is uncertainty. And so what we provide is advice that suggests that whenever you need money, there's going to be a smart place to get it. And these tiers and the things Matthew and Adam are speaking about right now is how we're able to honor that commitment. So should you follow the advice that Matthew would be providing with the support of Adam, Michael, the tax strategy, the investment strategy, it will prepare you for the truth. The truth is we don't know what's going to happen. But what we do know how to do is prepare you for that so that whatever does happen and whenever it happens, when you need money, there's going to be a smart place to get it. So thanks for setting that all up. I like, oh, this is important. I don't know how to explain it, so I'm going to turn it back to you guys.
So, Michael, on this slide, numbers don't act alone. What this is representing is the new legislation, right? There, senior filers can get an additional deduction. How does CMG think about, and how does CMG prepare our clients for new legislation that takes place, such as what happened with the OBBA and the additional senior deduction?
It's a great question, and I think kind of to ground how we think about it, keep two pieces in mind. You know, first and foremost, all of the tax strategies that we put together for our clients are based around our clients' plans and what's important to them. What do they want to accomplish? Right? We never let the tax tail wag the dog. We always want to make our clients' plans as tax efficient as possible. And then the second piece is keeping the long term in mind. Understanding what our clients want to accomplish from a tax point of view, not just this year, but over their retirement years and then even beyond their lifetime is really important, because oftentimes people tend to focus on their tax exposure maybe in a vacuum, looking at this year, maybe 3 or 4 years until retirement, and don't pay as much attention to 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, because it's not right in front of them. And this is one of those instances where each person is impacted in a little bit of a different way, but the senior deduction is available to our clients over 65 for lower incomes, and the 22 and 24% bracket is where we start to see this begin to phase out. And it poses a really interesting question. If you do a conversion during this time when the senior deduction is available to you, and we might be targeting a conversion in the 22 or 24% bracket, and you start to phase out of the senior deduction, in effect, what that can do is make your Roth conversion more expensive. You're foregoing that deduction that was otherwise available to you. On paper, that can make a conversion look more expensive than it might be. Again, we want to draw our clients back to long term, that though we may be increasing taxes near term and possibly foregoing a senior deduction that's available right now, long term, it's with the mindset of reducing required distributions meaningfully over a 20-year time horizon once they begin. And so what might be a near-term momentary increase in taxes creates a really long-term advantage for our clients down the road. And so when we're making these recommendations to our clients, Matthew, it's with the long-term vision for their tax reduction and tax efficiency in mind, not just looking at this year and how do we minimize tax exposure in 2026 or 2027, but how do we do it over 20 years over their retirement?
Well, and a lot of people, and I think it's really important, I want to just emphasize that for people who are over 65 now, your chances of living past age 85 are really high. And the fastest growing segment of our population right now is 85-year-olds and above. Now, beauty is a low base, so there weren't a lot of them in the past, but there are a lot of them now. And so we're starting to see more and more people live longer and longer. So what was true when I was born is we were supposed to retire and die shortly thereafter. It's not happening. People are living longer. And so my mother-in-law is 96, still lives in her own home. My aunt is 93. She lives in an assisted living facility but is quite well. And we're seeing more and more of this kind of thing happen. So don't underestimate the long term. Matthew, would you comment on that? Talking to your clients, because don't you find that your clients are a lot younger than they thought they would be at the age they are when they're like my age?
Well, not only that, Doug, the quality of life is going up as well, which is nice. So, typically you think about retirement in three buckets. The first bucket of retirement is when people are just retiring. They have a lot of goals, a lot of projects they've been wanting to do, a lot of travel. The second, they start slowing down a little bit, spending more time around their grandkids, family, and doing the things that they want. And then the third bucket is they're revolving their lives around doctor's appointments. I'm not kidding. Seriously, they're revolving their days around doctor's appointments and just relaxing and selling into retirement. What we're finding out is that second phase is lasting, or excuse me, the first phase moving into the second phase is lasting a lot longer than what they had originally thought, which is great. Because that's what it's all about is
Yeah.
helping them
Well,
experience their retirement to the fullest.
well, and I personally like to borrow a phrase from a guy named Mitch Anthony. I like to think what we're really providing is a high return on life for these folks. And we do that by also giving them good returns on investment through good tax strategy and the coordination of all that. So all of this really matters. And so really want to emphasize that. Back to deducting and giving some money away. I know some of our people like charitable deducting. So tell us what's happening here, Michael.
Sure thing. We talked a little bit on some of the tax changes that we've seen. There are some other opportunities and changes on the charitable giving side of it. And I know not all of our clients are charitably inclined, but a lot of our clients are going to be impacted by these new laws and the changes that we see for 2026. So for 2026, on top of a standard deduction, for our clients that do not itemize, you can take a 1,000, depending on your filing status, $2,000 deduction for charitable giving that you do. Again, meaningful for our clients that are donating small amounts on a regular basis to their charities that they really value a lot. On the downside, though, there are some impacts to charitable giving, if we want to look at the next slide, that really maybe aren't working in our clients' favor. There's a new 0.5% floor for charitable gifts, meaning you have to get over a certain amount to have these charitable donations be deductible in the current year on your return. This is for our clients that itemize deductions. Now, on its surface, not quite the most advantageous law change. However, just know that anything that is limited out carries forward, so you don't lose it. You just might not be able to deduct it for this particular year. And then above charitable giving, on the itemized deduction side, we have a new change that came into effect where our 30 set for our clients in the 37% bracket, our top income earners. On the next slide, we'll see an illustration of what that looks like from a haircut to the benefit of your itemized deductions. Under prior law, you would have been able to get a 37-cent deduction for every dollar of income that you had. Now that's been limited to 35%. Well, all of these changes really speak to the benefit and the need for planning and working in a real team environment for our clients. It speaks to having the right thought process, not just this year, but looking out over the next couple of years. If we know we're going to have fluctuations, Doug, in income, how can we plan for that over various years? Does it mean we want to donate more to charity this year, or to take income from stock options, maybe Roth conversions, maybe capital gains in a given year and minimize it in other years? Again, it's a real cohesive strategy that we want to put together for our clients, but it all starts at the foundation of what do you want to accomplish over the next couple of years?
Well, and to your point, for those who are charitably inclined and want to deduct or want to give, they get the tax benefit of doing so, which allows them to give more. I'd be curious, as I'm thinking back on my own career, that 35-cent number on the far right there, how that has changed over the years. I remember at times that number, that top number, that next dollar was like 70 cents. No, in your career, how have you seen that fluctuate? Because that's part of what happens after elections is those numbers change again. And that's why the process of strategizing is never ending. Is this just,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's interesting because I think right now, Doug, we're at the lowest tax rate currently that I think a lot of us have experienced in a long time,
Oh,
and
my
maybe
goodness
ever
sakes.
will. And so
Yeah.
I think it kind of goes back to, and I know we've talked about Roth conversions quite a bit today, but it goes back to the value of that none of us can forecast what tax laws are going to look like over the next 10, 20, 30 years. But being able to take advantage of the rates that we have today, you're effectively buying insurance. If the tax rates go back to 39.6, where they were just several years ago, or even higher, going back several decades, then you've paid those taxes now and locked in some very favorable tax rates that we have today. If the tax rates go up long term, you're certainly going to be impacted by that, but not as much as someone that might not have planned properly for that.
Yeah, I think that's remarkable. And this, speaking of this, this is the great question. What happens when things aren't coordinated? And Matthew's our great coordinator, but you can start, Michael, and Matthew, please jump in here because it's your job to make sure people are coordinated.
We see this frequently, and when we're talking to our clients, maybe that are just joining us, having looked at Roth conversions, Doug, we didn't invent Roth conversions. Clients come to us having done Roth conversions or Roth contributions prior to working with the Mather Group, but we oftentimes see that clients don't have a strategy around what they're doing with conversions, and maybe focused on just maximizing a particular bracket, the bracket that they're in right now, right? Without real strategy around the long-term vision for where they want their taxes to be over 20 to 30 years into retirement. And so we want to focus first and foremost around mitigating that so we can really smooth our clients' taxes over their lifetime. Again, we've talked about required distributions, how those all of a sudden, just from one year to the next, will begin. And at that point, you lose the flexibility. You now have a fixed amount of income that's going to be coming in. And so the goal with our conversions and with other charitable giving strategies as well is to smooth our clients' income out over their lifetime, really reduce that overall effective tax rate. We talk a lot about looking at the tax brackets again, but planning for a lower effective tax rate is really at the core of our tax planning. Making sure that we're drawing assets from accounts as efficiently as possible, in particular when we're talking about Roth conversions and charitable giving. Adam spoke to that, and just making sure that we've got the right assets in the right location and that we're drawing from the right account, all based around the plan that we've put together. And then around the estate tax side, for our clients that want to pass wealth meaningfully to the next generation, take advantage of the rates that we see today and the gifting that's available to you. And when we're looking at the investment piece of it, it's not just in a silo. It's all factored in with what our clients want to accomplish, as well as weaved in with the tax strategy as well.
Well, and then that brings you into it, Matthew, because all this really ends up with does after we know all this and we decide we should do something, then doing it. There's some stuff in here that I think real important for our viewers to hear.
Yeah, Doug, no, thank you. I mean, and that's it, is we can design a beautiful plan built around and centered around our clients' goals and values. And that's what we do. But it's just a plan until it gets brought to life, until it's actually executed and implemented. And the reality of it is all humans contend with behavioral finance biases with varying degrees and based on different situations. But in all situations, you've got a team at TMG to guide you through these different decision-making processes. On the screen here, we've identified a few biases that can impact decision making, but what do we do with this information? So what? Um, so one of the things I think that the first step is, Doug, is just to help recognize. It's to take a step back, recognize and call out the emotion we feel when it comes to paying taxes, when it comes to seeing our account balances go down due to the tax payment, and in many cases, seeing Medicare premium payments rise due to IRMA. I think recognizing the emotions on how we feel can help us move from an emotional state to a more rational state. And I think once we're in a more rational state, Doug, what tends to happen is it allows us to reflect on what's taking place around us. So that way we can then better reflect on the data and the evidence that's presented to us and that is being proposed. I think one thing that's important is these conversations aren't done in a silo. They're done throughout the year, because what we want to do is prepare our clients for the inevitable recommendation where they're not having to make a decision on the fly. They're able to take their time. They're able um, to soak it in, and then finally end up giving us the authorization to go ahead and implement what we're talking about. I think it's also important to reflect on why we don't want to take a certain recommendation in the first place, because the why matters, because the why is going to dictate how we reframe the conversation in our own minds. I think it's also important to reflect on the fact that how we got here in the first place. If we're here in this position, you must have made a lot of right decisions and have made a lot of good decisions along the way. So we want to continue making those good decisions. So once we're in a calmer state, I think it's important to reframe about what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do in the first place. And we do this by thinking about what is the purpose of implementing the strategy. The purpose of implementing the strategy is so that we can have greater after-tax wealth. Well, what does that matter? What's the purpose of greater after-tax wealth? It's so that we can do what we want to do, so that we can pay for grandchildren's colleges. It's so that we can travel. It's so that we can leave a legacy. It's a multitude of different things for our clients, and that's, I think, when we ground the why and the reason why we're implementing the recommendation, it becomes a lot easier to do those things that we don't want to do at the very beginning, which is prohibiting us, or not prohibiting, but keeping us from taking the recommendation in the first place, such as paying taxes earlier than we otherwise could have, but knowing that there's a bigger benefit on the outside. And then finally, I think we want to respond. We can respond with the correct answer and feel confident that the decision was made and are in alignment with our values and what matters most to our clients. You can also feel confident that the decision was based on strong data and evidence backed by experts in each of tax, estate, and the investment field, and by a firm that truly understands our clients' goals and values. And that's why we spend so much time throughout the year understanding what our clients' goals are. That way we can understand their spend, and then cultivate the tax, estate, and investment strategy specifically around them.
That was fantastic. And in a previous program, we actually talked about the 4 Rs, and I'm going to just highlight them for everybody real quick. Matthew actually gave you the narrative around each of them. The first is to recognize, and that's that emotional state, the bias, and all that. Then reflect, then reframe, then respond. And that response moves us from knowing to deciding to actually doing. And we actually end up doing it. So this has been fantastic. I know we've hit the bewitching hour. Some key figures, these are all here. Is there anything here that we need to make sure we say to somebody right now? They can look at it real quick. Michael?
I think we've covered enough on this, Doug.
I think we have. Adam, anything you want to add as we hit these key takeaways?
All I was going to really say is I think this really highlights the team approach that we have. I mean, we've all talked about how we interact with each other throughout the year. You said at the beginning, Doug, we're not speaking to market timing. We don't think that necessarily makes sense. But when it comes time to some of these decisions, tax-related strategies, the timing does matter more. Because RMDs aren't going to wait for a decision. They're going to come as they come. You lose the ability to compound money over the long term if you wait too long as well. Michael highlighted it very, very well. There's new rules, new opportunities, completely, things change. And so there's a huge benefit to having an in-house team of experts that stay on top of these changes and are able to communicate with the advisors, the clients, other team members. And again, all of this has to be integrated together to really drive the best outcomes.
And that says it up. I think you've summed it up well, and we really appreciate all of you being here with us. We're going to be here again next month. I can already tell Matthew Greer is going to be more often a guest. We've had Michael on before, and he'll be here. And we, of course, wouldn't be doing the show if we didn't have all you viewers. So please come back, tell your friends, and please make a responsible, values-based decision with your money and your life.